Happy Halloween! I know it's not October yet, but I'm tired of waiting. So in honor of the spooky season, I decided to play some older horror games that are new to me. First on the list is Call of Cthulhu: Dark Corners of the Earth. Now, I've wanted to play this game for a very long time, and I'm glad to announce that I enjoyed playing it quite a bit. It's not too long and not too short, plus it gave me a few good spooks. It was pretty well received upon release, more so than I would have thought after playing. Too bad that didn't prevent it from selling like shit. It even makes its way onto top 10 horror games you haven't played list. Unfortunately, despite the great reviews Cock got, maybe I shouldn't abbreviate the title. Unfortunately, despite the great reviews Call of Cthulhu got, this game has a lot of issues that prevent it from reaching its full potential. And this is super disappointing because I feel like if everything was executed the way it should have been, this game would have been considered one of the greatest horror games of all time. That's a bold ass claim, Ritsu. You go, girl. Call of Cthulhu is a horror FPS much like BioShock, Fear, and Condemned, though it kind of diverts from these titles. Where all these other horror FPSs have both action and horror elements occurring at the same time, for some weird reason Call of Cthulhu keeps them separate. And with me not being too crazy about FPS games, there are whole segments that I am not a fan of. I'm sure I would not have this issue if I wasn't such a big baby, or if the game tried to scare me regardless of how much action is going on. Resident Evil 7, for example, does a great job at keeping the player on edge during the whole playthrough, or at least during the first playthrough. Anyway, Call of Cthulhu often takes breaks between horror segments where it switches over to a bare bones shooter, and I fucking hate it because the horror aspects are really well done and it feels like they're being wasted by them not being used in every level. It's Call of Cthulhu, so of course there are Lovecraftian monsters about. And as you would imagine, a game with the foundation crafted by one of the most prolific and famous horror authors of all time can be pretty scary. Contrary to my initial belief, this game is not based off of the Call of Cthulhu short story, but it is loosely based off of the Shadow over Innsmouth and the Escape from Innsmouth scenario from the Call of Cthulhu RPG, and as such, Cthulhu isn't in the game. I mean, it is mentioned and you can find a few statues of it, but Cthulhu itself never shows up. However, that's okay because there is more than enough atmosphere and giant monsters to make up for it. The atmosphere. Oh my god. The atmosphere. It's just oh so succulent. Most locations in the game are weirdly empty and quiet. Every once in a while, mysterious noises can be heard that catch you off guard most of the time. It never fails to send chills down my spine. And the town of Innsmouth is easily one of the creepiest areas in the game despite it being filled with people. It sort of gives off a Wicker Man vibe, which is totally reasonable because both have very similar setups. Someone goes missing in a rural town, so a private detective goes to investigate. The townspeople pretend like they know nothing about what's going on, but really they know exactly what's going on. Then they end up turning against the detective for the sake of their cult. So yeah, I totally understand it giving off the same vibe. Did I just spoil the Wicker Man? Walking around the dark dank streets filled with people who are conspiring against you can be pretty unsettling. And this amazing atmosphere is carried beyond Innsmouth, following you throughout the whole game and is only amplified with the visions Jack has and the game's Sanity System. Frequently, Jack will have visions, usually allowing him to see through the eyes of someone or something else. This is probably utilized the best in the Marsh Refinery level, which on a side note is a level I absolutely hate. Throughout the second section of this level, you will often have visions of something following the same path you are on. I found myself checking behind me several times during this whole affair, hoping that there wasn't some grotesque creature ready to pounce on me. That's a feeling I want to have while playing a horror game, and not many games I've played bring that to the table. Now, on the other hand, these same visions that add to the spooky factor are also annoying as shit. They are very frequent and vary in length. You also can't skip them. So every time you lose a boss fight, which will happen a lot, you will be forced to watch the same cutscene again, only for you to die to the boss yet another time and the cycle continues. The Sanity System is pretty basic for the most part. You see something fucked up, your vision and movement goes out the window, just like any other game with a Sanity System except for Eternal Darkness. In addition to this minor inconvenience, Jack will also start rambling to himself quietly. He'll say stuff like, "It's behind me, it's behind me, it's coming to get me." Yeah, that adds a little something something to the overall atmosphere. It really helps me get immersed in the horrorscape the developers put together. Unfortunately, that is totally ruined by the voice acting. I mean, it's not bad, but it's also not good. It's probably leaning towards the bad though. I'm okay with that though. I don't need big budget voice acting to keep me happy. What I do have a problem with is that there is no variation or emotion in Jack's voice. He just saw a dead little girl in the sewers and starts freaking out, which is reasonable. But this comes to a complete stop when you examine something.
Why did I come here? What the hell is all this stuff? Ah, shit! It's corrosive! I don't know why I'm here.
This just really pulls me out of it for some reason. Now, I shouldn't expect the developers to do a second take of every line in the game, a normal one, and one for when Jack is frightened. I mean, that cost money, right? They could have added to the sanity system to make it so that Jack can't focus enough to examine things when his sanity is too low. That gives the player an incentive for keeping track of his sanity, because you won't be able to progress without getting that taken care of. Boom! The action-heavy segments are boring for the most part. They usually take place on super large maps with too few enemies. That added in with the lack of variety of enemies makes every new area the same old same old. I mean, there are humans, sea people, and... Actually, that last guy is one of the few bosses in the game. And these are some of the only parts of these action-heavy segments that I enjoy quite a lot. In most, you are just one man going against a colossal monster, most of the time having to rely on environmental stuff to get the job done, because your puny human weapons won't even make a scratch. These battles are cool as shit. The developers could have had the game be a boss rush of Lovecraftian monsters and I'd honestly love it. These boss fights and a select few set pieces were the only time I enjoyed shooting at things during my whole playthrough. Was it worth it for these moments? Maybe. This game also has stealth mechanics. Yeah. They're not that good, and you only need to use them whenever you don't have a weapon, which is like 2 out of the 12 hours it takes to finish this game. And even then, you will be too frustrated to even bother with it. The stealth mode slows you down to a snail's pace, which I find hilarious because you already move extremely slow in this game. You're more likely to get caught trying to sneak past someone in stealth mode than if you were just crouch walking. In most cases, I just said fuck it and made a run for it while dodging bullets. Like most survival horror games, there are lots of puzzles in Call of Cthulhu. Not very good puzzles, but puzzles nonetheless. They can all be separated into 2 very distinct categories. The first of which would be, wow, that was easy. And the second is, how was I supposed to know that was a puzzle? There is no in-between and it bugs me so much. But you know what bugs me more than lame puzzles? Bugs. This game is known for being filled with bugs that the developers never bothered to patch, so it's not the smoothest experience. There are also frequent crashes, especially when you're trying to save your game. That is, if you get to the save screen, because some can be difficult to open. Sometimes you can't use an item where you're supposed to use them, making you believe that what you're doing is wrong and discouraging you from trying to do that again. But in reality, you are doing it the right way. You just have to close out of the game and reload your save and try it again. I'm a patient person, so I can definitely put up with jank and bugs, but I would imagine that most people would stop playing this game after a short while because of all these issues. Anyway, I liked this game a lot. It had a lot of potential and great ideas that were just executed poorly, and despite its great critical reception, it didn't sell too well. I feel like if everything I mentioned was changed, this game could have been on par with Resident Evil 4. But it is the way it is, so I guess it will slowly become more and more obscure. Unless you're a Lovecraft or horror fan, you are not missing much by not playing this game. Apparently, it was supposed to have 2 sequels that looked pretty good, but unfortunately the developers couldn't find a producer and went bankrupt, leaving the 7 people who played this game extremely disappointed. But hey, at least there was that new Call of Cthulhu game that came out a few years ago, and I heard that it was really good, so maybe I'll play that eventually. That's it for this video. Subscribe if you haven't already, because in the next video we are going into Burkittsville for our next horror game. Oh, and come join the Discord server, link in the description. See ya!